Many people often assume that students from disadvantaged backgrounds will produce poorer results than students from more advantaged backgrounds, that it's nigh on impossible for a disadvantaged school to improve. Now, you may or may not recall this quote from the unforgettable Hollywood blockbuster Under Siege 2: Dark Territory. Assumptions are the mother of all muck-ups. Shouldn't we challenge them? A piece of Victorian research undertaken by Zabar, Kimber and Marshall looked to challenge this assumption by asking the question, can disadvantaged schools do well? What they found were a number of high-performing disadvantaged schools across our state, and they sought to understand what is it that these schools do to achieve their success, or as they phrased it, how do they punch above their weight? What is it that these schools do to buck the trend and not only outperform other disadvantaged schools, but in many cases, more advantaged schools? What their research found were a number of lessons or conditions that are common across all of those high-performing disadvantaged schools that we can all learn from as we strive to improve our own school, regardless of its economic standing. Of these conditions are 4 preconditions. Establish these in your school and you're ready for success. So what are the 4 preconditions of a high-achieving school? Number 1, strong leadership that is shared. The leaders in these schools have a clear direction, they have passion, and they have a team focus. These leaders roll up their sleeves, they enable others, and they provide a sense of stability. The second precondition of a high-achieving school is to have high expectations of teachers and students. These schools genuinely believe that every one of their students is capable of success. And the teachers in these schools, well, they believe they can make a difference. Number 3, an orderly learning environment. That is, a school having its affairs in order, having clear expectations around behaviour management, and having organised and predictable learning environments. And the final precondition of a high-achieving school is to have a focus on what matters most. These schools know exactly what they need to do to achieve and how that's going to play out. Now, I find it incredibly encouraging and quite daunting to read this kind of research. I want to improve my school. What do I need? Strong leadership, high expectations, an orderly learning environment, and a clear set of priorities. However, it's once you start establishing these that you can really start focusing on student data, building teacher capacity, differentiation, building a positive school culture, and so on. You can see how that's overwhelming. I believe for a school to improve, it needs a theoretical basis, a framework, something to hang its hat onto. It needs to know exactly where to start, and it needs to include student voice on that journey. In other words, school improvement needs to be intentional and student focused. So where do you start? Well, the good news is, as our friends Zabar, Kimber and Marshall tell us, is this. You want to know where to start with school improvement? Look to that 3rd precondition, an orderly learning environment. Now, I'll be honest with you here, when I was first introduced to this precondition, it conjured up images for me of desks in rows, of school uniforms being measured to below the knees, and over-compliance on rules and regulations. A throwback to education circa 1950. That's not what they meant. An orderly learning environment encompasses a safe space to learn, respect for relationships, and classroom spaces that are designed to encourage collaboration, creativity, imagination, and rigour. An orderly learning environment is a game changer. School improvement needs to be intentional and student focused. And I'm here today to show you how that precondition of an orderly learning environment can actually be quite bright and unorthodox. Allow me to share with you a story of how this precondition was put into effect. Some time ago, I worked at a fantastic primary school up in Darwin in the Northern Territory that was on a steep improvement journey. This school is low socioeconomic, 50% of the students are Indigenous, and the vast majority of the student body don't have English as a first language. Add to this attendance data that fluctuates, low test scores, and behaviours that can be at times challenging. We look to that notion of an orderly learning environment as our place to start on the improvement journey, and we turned our attention to classroom spaces and sought to make them more collaborative for both students and teachers. We designed open learning environments and encouraged team teaching and planning. But we still had a problem. Our students were turning up to class in a state of chaos and certainly not ready to learn. So we looked further afield, beyond the four walls of that classroom, to other transitioning spaces around the school, hallways, stairwells, and other thoroughfares. And there was one stairwell in particular that encapsulated both our solution and our problem. This stairwell was the scene of pushing and shoving, and it seemed to be a magnet for rubbish. It's quite a humble stairwell, there's only 2 flights in it, yet for a student to get from the top of these stairs down to the bottom without landing in trouble was quite an achievement. This dull, brown brick stairwell became the pin-up space for our work on that precondition. There was one school leader who was most interested in this space in particular, and she often spoke for the need for order, yet order in a deinstitutionalised sense. "Jackie," she said, "I would love to see this space filled with provocations, things that make our students stop and wonder about the world around them." And with that, this school leader gave me, a classroom teacher, her vision to play with.
Bubblegum, it pops in your face. Pop, 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 pop. Pop, 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 pop. Bubblegum, it pops in your face. Pop, 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 pop. Pop. Bubblegum, it pops in your face. Bubblegum, it pops in your face. Pop, 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 pop. Bubblegum, it pops in your face. Pop, 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 pop. Pop, 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 pop. Bubblegum, it pops in your face. Pop, 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 pop.
This stairwell space was transformed through a 10-week project entitled Musical Stairwells. Using a $5,000 arts grant, we were able to employ 2 street artists and 1 DJ to transform this space into a funky hangout full of art and music. Each Friday, our students would rotate in 2 large groups between making art and making music. Working with the artists, our students learned about street art, its mediums, its messages and its notoriety. They looked at the works of Blek-Lerat, Obey and Banksy amongst others. Students explored that notion of art as a communal process, where it's the very nature of public art that it can be changed, it can be removed or worked over. Students produced an impressive body of work, hundreds of pieces. Working with the DJ, students learnt about the history of hip-hop and rap, the use of figurative language, such as metaphors, similes and alliteration when writing lyrics. Students learnt about rhythm and beats and how to add layers to their sound to get a desired effect. Using a classroom set of tablets, students recorded their music and later added their vocals. They edited and produced a large number of tracks. Students helped paste the art into the stairwell, and it looked fantastic. We then added the music. Each of the student tracks was stored online, and therefore they could be converted and hyperlinked into a QR code. Easy enough, get the link, convert it into a code, print it out and paste it onto the stairwell, and hey presto, we'd created musical stairwells. We had over 70 songs pasted throughout the stairwell that you scan with your device for the music to start playing out. Students hosted a gallery opening where they took visitors throughout the space, explaining how the art was made and how it was installed and how they could access the music. Art theory and appreciation, a history of music, art production, measurement and installation, oral language development through curating a gallery opening, teamwork, and the secret ingredient, fun. And our students created an orderly learning environment through musical stairwells. The impact of this project was far-reaching. Student attendance improved on project days, and all of our students felt a sense of achievement regardless of their literacy levels. My colleagues and I realised that we don't need to be omnipotent. You don't have to be a DJ or a street artist to create a musical stairwells or whatever your project may be. You just need to be prepared to take a risk, perhaps be pointed in the right direction and use the resources around you. This stairwell is validating and inspiring. Our students now move around that space in a much less chaotic state, and they arrive in class generally ready to learn because they own the space. School improvement needs to be intentional and student-focused. Pick a theory or a framework for your own school's journey. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There's plenty of theory out there, and it's theory like the one that we chose to adopt that still allows us to be radical. School improvement, strategic planning, change, it needs to be student-focused. Let us make students a genuine part of the change that we are trying to make. Thank you.